Hi everyone, and welcome to the Treasures series at Revelation Family Church. My name is Dan. I'm one of the leads here at the church. I'm going to be leading us through today, and I've got the quirky pleasure of introducing you to my wife, Kathryn. Kathryn, why don't you say hi?
Hello, everybody.
So, Kathryn, for those who don't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about where your focus is day by day, what you do?
Yes, so as well as homeschooling at the moment, I've had a bit of a change of career over the last year, and for many years worked for the Prison and Probation Service. And then the last year I've been leading Life Centre, which is a charity that was actually started from a group of Christians from Revelation Church who realised there was no provision for survivors of rape and sexual abuse across West Sussex. And they started Life Centre to plug that gap back in 2001. And actually, back in 2001, I started as a volunteer on the helpline many years ago and have come full circle, and I'm now leading Life Centre. So Life Centre provides support in many ways to survivors and their close supporters. The main ways we provide counselling. Traditionally, that's face-to-face counselling in a counselling room, and that's done by, I've got 19 experienced counsellors across West Sussex who deliver that service. We've also still got the helpline and the text service, although it's grown over the years, and we've got 33 volunteers from churches across West Sussex who volunteer to provide that service. And we also have email counselling as well, so we have lots of different ways that people can get support for where they're at. And yeah, we see many referrals every year. So just to give you a flavour of that, last year we saw 708 people referring for counselling, and we delivered over 5,000 sessions across West Sussex. And at the moment, we're getting between 300 and 400 texts a week on our text service. So quite a lot of support that we're offering across West Sussex.
So tell us a little bit about who uses the service. Where do people come from? What sort of ages? What sort of life backgrounds? Who uses Life Centre?
So yeah, we see. So it's a real variety actually, particularly in terms of age range. We see some very young children. I think our youngest client's been 2, and all the way up to people in their 80s who still want to reach out for support and recognise that they want to change something in their lives. We see men, women, people from the transgender community. So lots of different people come and contact our services. I think the thing that is common though is some of the issues that they face on a day-to-day because of the experience that they've had. We see people with a lot of different mental health problems, including depression and anxiety, people who've been thinking about suicide. We see people with eating and sleeping disorders, a whole range of issues that are really debilitating because of the experience that has happened to them. And it's a real honour to support people and to offer them support and move them on in their journey. And a lot of clients actually refer to the support that they get as life-changing. So it can really make a difference to people's lives when they are really struggling with what's happened to them.
Well, since the middle of March, the whole way our world, particularly here in the UK, functions has shifted and changed, and that's had major impacts on commerce, but also on the charity world as well as statutory providers. So what sort of impact has the pandemic had on what you deliver and how you deliver it?
Yeah, so the main difference it's made to us is that instead of seeing people face to face in a lovely counselling room, we've moved our services over to the phones or online. So we're offering people that support by telephone mainly, but with some online counselling. And that's actually been really well taken up by people. They find that they're saying to us that they can say things over the phone that they can't say face to face, so they're really valuing that.
Brilliant.
Not everyone can do that though. Our primary age children can't really access the service in that way, and that's mainly due to the non-verbal nature of the support that they get. Sure. So we're trying to keep in touch with them and their families and offer them support in that way, but we're having to wait to provide the full service to them. So that's been the main shift. We're also our helpline is run from our office, and many of our volunteers are in the vulnerable category. So we've had to reduce that slightly, but we're getting back to normal service now, and we're trying to put in place a way that people can offer that service from their homes and run it remotely so that it's more robust in the future. So we're seeing a few changes there. I think one of the other big changes for us has been in funding. Since the beginning of lockdown, we've seen a downturn in all of our income streams initially. So that has been a real challenge. You know, people giving less and paying less for their counselling, donations and grants not coming in at the beginning of lockdown. So we were quite concerned about what the future would look like. And I know that's probably similar for a lot of charities. So those are the main challenges for us.
Okay, that's good to hear. The whole focal point of this series that we're doing with Treasures is drawn inspiration from Isaiah 45, where the prophet speaks about finding treasure in dark places and good things in secret places. And in many ways, this pandemic has thrown darkness on things and thrown people into unfamiliar places. So do you have experience of finding treasure in this season? You know, maybe not anything that's ideal or desirable. It sounds certainly having to stop and adjust some of the services you provide to very vulnerable people, I'm sure is completely unideal for everybody. But what's God been up to? What treasures have been sort of surfaced as you've, like most of the world, fumbled around a bit in the dark trying to find your way through this?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of the services that we have provided, we wouldn't have thought of providing over the phone counselling, but actually some people have said they really love it and they'd like to continue. So there's treasure in the way you adapt and thinking about how that might move you forward into the future. I think we've really, over the last couple of weeks, really felt God's blessing in terms of funding. It's completely turned around for Life Centre, and it really feels like God's provision as well. We have been applying to lots of different funding pots, and one of the funding pots that was available to services like ours, we hadn't found out about. There was a bit of a breakdown in communication somewhere, and we didn't know. And all of the other services applied, and we didn't apply. But God's provision was just incredible, because one of the big statutory funders knew that we hadn't applied, and they had a pot of money for the same organisations, and they gave us more of that money to kind of even the playing field, if you like, and make sure that people who accessed our services could get the support that they needed. So that was just an incredible piece of blessing that we've had. We've also really noticed that people are just going above and beyond in terms of generosity. So my fundraiser is working extra hours, and lots of people within the organisation giving their time for free. But a lovely story last week of one of the people that we supported with counselling had told her employer about the support that she'd received. And the employer was so struck by the change in her and her confidence and just how different she was as a result of the counselling. They've offered us free IT support, because that's the nature of their business, for the foreseeable future, which is just incredible. A real blessing. And then also in the last couple of weeks, we've been given a real opportunity to expand our service, which could mean that we grow to, potentially adding a fifth onto the organisation. So a real opportunity to expand in this time as well, which is really fantastic, particularly given some of the challenges over the pandemic for the people that we support have been that, there is an increase in people experiencing abuse at this time. And we've certainly found that on our helplines. Yeah. People have been calling in, experiencing in lockdown some quite difficult situations, which I think will lead to increased referrals in the future. So it's really important that we've got that funding and are able to grow to be able to support people once this is over.
I saw on the news something that's kind of surfaced more than it normally does around the challenges that some people live with around domestic violence. And I know that there is a correlation with sexual violence within domestic settings as well. So as that's hit our news headlines, has that been something that you're noticing or having to deal with in an sort of enhanced way because of the extra pressures of lockdown?
Yeah, I think people will be experiencing more of both types of abuse at the moment, and certainly we are hearing some of that on our phone lines. We do ask people about where, that correlation that you described, Dan, and not everybody answers the question, but of those that do answer the question, we think it's about 30%. So it's quite a big crossover between domestic and sexual violence and violence in relationships. And we're part of some, there's lots of meetings with domestic and sexual violence providers at the moment to kind of track the demand and what's happening. So we're quite aware that, domestic abuse services as well as our services there's an increased need of those services at the moment.
So it sounds like the Lord's really looked after Life Centre through this very challenging time and given illustrations of random financial provision and practical operational provision, as well as staff and contractors going above and beyond. If people are listening to this today and want to find out a bit more, because I heard you mention volunteers, how can people volunteer for Life Centre, and what does that volunteering entail? And the subject inevitably is an incredibly difficult subject. So how do you help your volunteers and support them?
Yeah, so our main use of volunteers is on the phone helpline and the text helpline. And it's quite an in-depth training course to become a Life Centre volunteer, to make sure that we really prepare well our volunteers so that they're ready to hear some of the things that they'll hear on the phones, because as you described, it's tough stuff. But what we find interestingly is that we don't have a really high turnover of volunteers. Our volunteers tend to stick with us, and I think that's because of the real value and treasure that comes from supporting people when they're at this really low ebb of their life. There's obviously something that's really draws people to that work, which is incredible. So that's the main way we use volunteers, and we train them, we offer them support, so supervision and things like that, so that they can do that in a well supported environment. And that's the main way we use volunteers. We do have other roles within the organisation. We have a fundraising team and an office team. So really, if people feel that they have skills and they really are interested in helping the work at Life Centre, I'd really be encouraging people to contact me, and we'll have a conversation about what your skills are and how we might put them to good use. So I think that would be the thing I would suggest, really.
And if people want to find out some more about Life Centre, you've given us an outline of it, which has been very, very helpful, but I know there's so much to what Life Centre does, working across this region, certainly across the county, with the phone lines potentially even beyond. How can people find out a little bit more? Tell us, I know there's a website, has that got information on? What's the
Yeah, so the website's got information on, it's www.lifecentre.uk.com, so it's nice and easy. And on there's our Twitter and social media tags as well, so you can follow us on social media, and there's all the information you need and office contact details, and also information about how you could refer for counselling if this is something that's affected you as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Kathryn. That's so good to share some of the story within what's not been an easy season for you and for the team at Life Centre and the trustees, but just so encouraging to hear good things coming out of a stretching and challenging season that I'm sure will equip you into the future. So thanks for sharing that. And if you've watched along today and want to find out more, you now know how you're able to do that. Whether you fancy volunteering in some way or supporting or donating, we'd really encourage you to do that. So Thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week with the last of our Treasures series before we pause for the summer holidays. Looking forward to being with you all again next week, and thank you, Kathryn.